want to thank Emily for your encouraging words. I was really nervous at first when I mentioned that I wanted to do a presentation, um, and you really helped me move on to do this. So thank you, Emily. Um, okay, so helper methods. I am. I mentioned I'm a baby developer because I've been learning how to code for the past year, and started learning Ruby on Rails the past 5 to 6 months. So I feel like I'm a baby a developer. Yeah. So helper methods, right? Let's start. So I have a tiny agenda going on. I have the introduction, the implementation, how a noob like me implements them, placement, where does the logic go, conclusion. Um, okay, so so what are helpers and what are they used for? I'm gonna read from here. So as I was browsing through the internet looking for definitions, I found this definition was more interesting to me. So helpers are models, macros, model and controller methods that help us dry up our code by extracting complex logic or duplicate code into reusable methods to be used in or by our views and controllers. So helpers are used all across Rails, and they're used to deal with forms, to generate hyperlinks, and for so many other things. In this presentation, I will not dive super deep into what are they. Oh, you can see my image. No. But it's as I'm still like processing and learning what they are. Here, I wanted to share where do you find your helpers, or where do you place them, right? So if you go to your code editor, to your directory tree, you can see that you have a sea of files, right? If you if you generate them with a scaffold command, you'll have a lot of files. But you will go to your folder app, and then I had an image here that shows you that once you click an app, you will see more folders and a folder that says helpers. I'm sorry, you can see it. This thing was working. I'm not sure what happened, but let's move on. Okay, you can see it here now. So when I was working with a group of group of other students, we had a project. The purpose was not to deploy an app, but it was more to learn how to collaborate with each other through GitHub and how to remain organized. So in this example, my helper method is extracting some conditionals, some of the complex logic from my views. So the buttons text of my object group changes depending on my action. If the action is a new, or if I want to update the information from a group, the name of the button or the text of the button will also change. So this allows me to keep my views more organized and dry. So this is how I wanted my views to look like. And I didn't share a lot of like the app, right? But have a user, and that user is able to join groups. This user is able to create a group, and my button, as I mentioned, when I create one, the button text is create. And the issue that I had is that whenever I wanted to edit my my group, I would the text of my button will not change. So I decided to create, I was using, my form partial to keep my code to not repeat myself, but I couldn't figure out how to make sure that my button will change depending on the action. So I just created another file, another partial. Um, and when my mentor looked at my code, she was like, hey, I see what you're doing here, but let's remember one of the main principles. Don't repeat yourself. And she told me, you should check out helper methods, read about them, and see how you can use them with your views. So, um, yeah, I was able to read through them and implement it on my previous example. So I know that sometimes our helper, what I was reading on the internet is that, sometimes, or you can place your helper methods in different places, but the best place to place your helpers or helper methods are in your helper files. Now, you could add these helpers in your controllers, right? But what we want, so by putting helper methods in our application controllers, we make it available to all of our controllers and views. But if we just want to keep, we want to keep our code accessible to specific things. That's why we separate them into our helper files. And here's just an example of, this is not like a personal example. There are some good, I read a couple of things that I had no idea about, but that I thought that they were good to know, to remember. So I'm just gonna read them. Some of them say, avoid creating multiple helper methods with the same name, even if they have their own isolated helper model and they work fine. It's another popular source of confusion. And as I am working through projects, I can see how that could be confusing. Another one says, helpers are models and do not allow inheritance. So if you want to combine methods from other helper models, you'd have to include those models in your own helper model. For this one, I am also trying to understand what inheritance means. And I feel like I can see what this is, what is the meaning of this tip, but I'm trying to understand it. It says, be warned though that the application helper should be avoided as much as possible, as it tends to become a dumping ground for code that doesn't seem to belong anywhere in particular. I saw a couple of examples again in the internet that where sometimes people just dump their helpers there, and even though they're functional, they're not organized, and it's hard to maintain and read the code, especially if other people are interacting with the application. So in conclusion, I remain flexible by adapting to your application needs, and remember to stay dry and explicit. But I will say that I did read something as well that say, many good developers believe that there are inherent problems with Rails helper methods because of the way they are namespaced and made available globally. For these developers, using decorators with a tool like Jam is a better option. So I didn't go more in deep as of why is this. I think I'm also like learning about this other side of helper methods, and I'm not sharing, or I didn't go into it. But I think that whatever is best for your personal app or your team, I will say, stay flexible and adapt. Yeah, thank you.